Hey everyone, my name is Razzy, and I've been trying to catch up on my indie game backlog. I'm ashamed to admit that I didn't get around to playing too many indie games last year, which is unusual considering there were actually a lot of good ones released, apparently. So the first game should come as no surprise because it was pretty much unanimously praised and it received a ton of awards, and that game is Firewatch. So you probably already know that this is a really good game, and you've probably been told that by people who are far more qualified to say so than I am. But I'm still going to gush on about it for a good deal of your time. And what I want to do with this video is maybe discuss some things that were not stressed as much as they should have been, the importance of those things, and also just discuss some things which I personally enjoyed or which I found interesting that maybe some people might have overlooked or simply not discussed in as much detail as I would have expected them to. So obviously I'm going to try and avoid spoilers for this video, but that's going to be a bit tricky because Firewatch is such a narrative-heavy game that discussing anything about it, even if I don't go into too much detail on the specific plot points or just specific narrative beats, I could potentially be spoiling it for you, or spoiling something awesome that the game has to offer. And yeah, so I went into this game not knowing anything aside from the fact that it was really good, and I came away extremely pleased that I went in with that approach because I had such an unexpected blast. I knew it was good, but I just didn't really know what was in store for me. And this video isn't gonna, like I said, it's not gonna spoil any specific plot points, but I am going to talk about things which are in the game that I wouldn't recommend you go in knowing about if you're at all interested in Firewatch. Otherwise, if you've played the game, this video is for you, and hopefully you can relate to some of the things I'm saying. And yeah, if you haven't played the game, I'm telling you now, you should go play it and then come back and watch this video and we can see if we had the same experiences. For those of you who are still watching, this is literally the amount of detail I'm willing to go into with regards to the story. After some effective introductory text explaining the earlier parts of his life and some of the heartbreaking tragedy he's undergone, the player character, Henry, is hired as a forest fire lookout. His boss, Delilah, communicates with him over radio, instructing him on specific tasks and talking to him as he goes about his day. Some weird shit starts happening in the forest as the days go by, and what ensues is a brilliant mystery that is uncovered at the player's own pace and in a manner expertly designed to be told in an interactive environment. So Firewatch is relatively short in comparison to most games, not in comparison to most indie games though, but it's about 4 to 5 hours long, and I enjoyed every minute of it. I'd much rather play a shorter game if it is more handcrafted and better paced, and I can play it without losing much interest or energy. In a world oversaturated with multi-million-dollar, highly linear blockbusters or massive open worlds with tons of uninteresting tasks and activities, unconvincing dialogue options, and character interactions, Firewatch was a breath of fresh air. I thought I was immersed in Dishonored 2. I thought I was addicted to Final Fantasy 15. Yeah, I thought. Firewatch reminded me what it actually feels like to forget about everything going on around me and forget about my real life and be completely invested in a game. And initially I was planning on only playing the game for about 2 hours and then going to bed because I was extremely tired that day, but I ended up playing the whole thing in one sitting and I was wide awake at the end, and I wanted to go through it a second time because I knew there were things that I missed, and I just wanted to engage with Henry and Delilah once more. These characters are so realistically written and convincingly acted. You don't see their faces, you only hear their voices, and yet they are two of the most real characters I've had the pleasure of communicating with in a game. There are dialogue options in Firewatch, but what keeps the flow of conversation going is that there's a time limit in which to say things. What I love is that every option is not simply a good, bad, or neutral option. They usually exist in a sort of grey zone. So every time a list of dialogue options was presented to me, that list usually encompassed things that I would actually consider saying. And even if something might seem positive, you know that there's more meaning behind the words than the game initially lets on, even before Henry actually delivers them. Some RPGs have this too, but you can't always interpret how your player character is going to express the words you pick. With Henry, you really do quickly grow to understand his personality and how he's going to conduct himself, and he's relatable. So he does have obviously a distinct voice and a distinct personality, but I was still able to put myself in his boots and think of how I'd approach a situation regardless of whether I was or wasn't him. If something made me angry, I'd pick the angry option. If something was funny but a bit rude, I'd pick it if the situation called for it.
Okay, you're probably out here because nobody back home can stand you. Which, after this brief introduction, is not a big shock.
Ouch! I'll chalk that up to you being tired and grumpy.
Well, I'd better get some sleep then.
One sec. Now it's my turn.
In most games with dialogue choices, I always pick the good guy who has immeasurable patience for everyone's shit, because I know somehow it's going to benefit me in the long run. Those interactions have no real meaning to me because I'm not approaching a situation like I would in real life. And I don't think that any human would respond that way, no matter how battle-hardened they are. Not in Firewatch. Each dialogue choice meant something to me. It also didn't need to have a branching story path that killed this person or helped this person. The simple expression of my true thoughts meant enough. And Delilah responds to Henry appropriately as well. She can take a joke. She can find reason behind an outburst.
Just so you know, I didn't mean to overstep my bounds earlier, when you brought up your wife.
I know you didn't. You were just making conversation. I appreciate it.
If you say something rude, she might get angry and go silent for a bit, but if you need help with something, you can ask her advice, or you can just not. You can just leave things the way they are and let them be, and let things simmer down for a bit, and just wait a while, and eventually, as with real life, you'll start talking again. I could talk forever about how great this game handles its characters, like the fact that it smartly removes uncanny valley facial expressions that do more to hinder the experience than enhance it. What gives the game even more character and personality is the manner in which it is animated. The exaggerated motions are so full of emotional expression. There is a point to this style of animation. It's not just because it's cheaper than motion capture. Yeah, this game has a cartoony aesthetic, but don't be deceived. It tackles some serious themes, and Henry's motion showcases his inner thoughts and facets of his personality.
There are, panties?
There are what?
I don't want to say that word again.
Why, 'cause you're 12?
The art style is beautiful, and the lighting incredible. I think having this simple aesthetic allows the developer to manipulate less assets to create distinct moods depending on what is happening within the story. This might also benefit the experience, because it doesn't clutter up your screen and shows you what is important. Also, building natural environments like this for a game is extremely difficult when trying to replicate the real world. And I don't think it would be possible for this small studio to do that on the budget that they had. Even AAA blockbusters have a history of struggling with this kind of setting. Having inanimate 3D objects requires less processing power, and in general, those sort of things are easier to replicate and adapt into a realistic setting. But you need to feel like this place is alive. And Firewatch manages to do that by removing the expectation of realistic looking foliage and scenery. So when wind blows through the trees, what you recognize as leaves rustle like you'd expect them to, because the game has programmed you to believe that these minimalistic objects are leaves, and as a result it's convincing. Or at least that's how I view it. But there is one gripe I have with the world, and that is the fact that there are barely any animals in the game, aside from a couple more scripted story moments that you could probably miss. But yeah, initially I thought that this was something to do with the conspiracy or the mystery behind the game, but it's not. Regardless, that's quite a small gripe, a nitpick, and you may not even notice it, or you may not have even noticed it until I mentioned it. But I think a huge part of what makes this game's world and its atmosphere so successful, I think it comes down to the music and the sound design. Even in the opening text, where you make very small decisions, and it's just displaying, writing and discussing what happens based on what you chose. Even that opening, just based on the music and the very few sound effects, honestly made me tear up a bit. It's pretty powerful, and pretty much all of that can be attributed to the music. With regards to sound effects, if I closed my eyes while playing, I felt like I was actually in a forest. There are suitable crunches and convincing sounds that play when you climb up some rocks or rappel up or down slopes, giving everything a sense of tangibility. No! I recommend wearing headphones and cranking the volume up to its maximum. It's so immersive, I felt like I could almost breathe in the fresh foresty air. A point came though where I actually didn't want to be so immersed in this game. Firewatch invoked some of the most genuine fear I've experienced in a video game in quite a while. Not because of excessive amounts of gore or the anticipation of jump scares. This story takes a turn that legitimately had me petrified, afraid to walk in any direction, afraid to look into any bush, afraid to climb up any rocks, afraid to pull out my map and compass. Just so scared I had to pause the game and pop off my headphones just to calm down. This story has everything. It's got drama, suspense, mystery, adventure, it's got humor, it's got some horror, and it's got lots of twists and turns. It's unpredictable, but at the same time it's grounded and believable. There was a point towards the end though where there was a fairly big exposition dump, and I didn't feel like the ending was as much of a climax as I was hoping for. It was a bit abrupt and anticlimactic, but yeah, overall though, the game had me riveted the whole way through. And you have to remember that, especially with regards to the ending, that this is a very grounded story. One of the many things I liked about Firewatch was its graphic design work, not only in the marketing material and the branding for the game, but also for its interface and its menus. I love how clean and elegant the text and the vector work is. So the game drops you into a small but fairly open world that can only be fully unlocked as you progress through the story. But one of my favorite things about this world is the manner in which you navigate it, and specifically the manner in which the game handles its heads-up display. There isn't really a HUD outside of when the dialogue options come into play and when you look at interactable objects. There's no minimap or markers telling you exactly where to go and how many meters it's going to take to get there. Instead, you get given an actual map, a compass, and a destination, or an objective. You can pull all this up at any point, but once it's up, navigation is slower and more cumbersome, so you'll probably end up looking around at the actual world to get an idea of whether or not you're heading in the right direction. The game trusts you to use these things to get where you need to go. I love that, because often games tell you exactly where to go and what route to take, and there's a big throbbing marker on your on-screen compass. All this stuff sort of distracts from the world around you. You're focused more on the destination and not the journey, and as a result, getting anywhere doesn't feel like much of an accomplishment because you're not encouraged to think and explore for yourself. And I just feel like, why have an open world if you're going to tell the player exactly which path to follow and exactly where to go? I know things pop up here and there, but overall, the player is probably not likely to take too much note of their surroundings when they know exactly where to go and how to get there. This is yet another way in which Firewatch uses less as more. And in spite of the world being smaller than in most games, with a minimalistic art style accompanying it, this place feels so packed with purposefully placed things to observe. I even read all the little notes and skimmed through the synopsis of each individual book, because I knew there was a greater significance to all of it. The attention to detail here is staggering. So yeah, clearly I can gush on about how good Firewatch is forever, but the game isn't flawless, and I'm about to nitpick a whole bunch of stuff that didn't really hinder my experience in a huge way, but it's stuff I feel is worth mentioning. So a lot of these issues are problems with regards to the technical side of things and performance, particularly I mean, this is on the PS4 because that's where I played it, but I experienced quite a few frame rate dips and random pauses as I was exploring the world. Some textures are quite low res, more pixelated than intentionally minimalistic. Clouds don't seem to move at all, so looking up can make you feel like you're just surrounded by a massive sky dome, which you are, but still. Loading times can be quite long in between days, which can break the flow of the story somewhat. Sometimes controlling Henry can be slightly clunky, and he can get hooked on environmental objects a bit too easily. There are also some moments where I felt Henry could easily climb up or jump across things to reach his destination, but the game can get away with this for the most part because it is so grounded and because Henry feels like a regular guy being careful while hiking. Interacting with things also has a tendency to be a tad finicky, because you may have to look directly at something in order to pick it up or talk to Delilah about it. But yeah, that's about it, and that's with me scraping the bottom of the barrel when it comes to looking for issues with this game. And like I said, these problems aren't deal breakers in the slightest. So yeah, there it is, my review of Firewatch. I can't believe I didn't get around to playing this game sooner. If I did, it would probably be quite high on my Game of the Year list for 2016. There seems to be so much more passion behind these independent games, and they're so much more willing to tackle more sensitive issues and delve into more interesting game mechanics and storytelling principles than any AAA game is willing to do. And I think that is something that should be supported, and I think it's something that we can all learn from. And so yeah, I'm definitely going to be playing more indies and covering them on this channel going forward. So if you're interested in sticking around for that, then I'd appreciate it. So yeah, thanks for watching this review. Have a great day, and I will see you all in the next video.